You've also, since you talked to Michael Proctor, have had multiple conversations about this case with your in-laws, correct?
Yes,
That also includes in-person conversations as well as phone calls and texts, correct?
that is correct.
And since you gave that statement to Michael Proctor, you've had multiple conversations specifically with Brian Albert, correct?
Yes, I've talked to Brian Albert.
That includes in-person phone calls and texts, correct?
That is correct.
Would you agree with me that in terms of the changes in your version of events from what you've testified during this trial to what is in Michael Proctor's report, you put the SUV farther down Fairview toward Chapman Street now, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Your testimony during this trial puts the SUV past the fire hydrant almost toward the neighbor's house, correct?
That is correct.
But however many times you saw that black SUV, you'd agree with me you never observed any damage to the rear of that vehicle, correct?
Correct.
Never saw any damage to the rear right taillight, correct?
Correct.
You'll also agree with me that every time you saw that black SUV, the vehicle had its headlights on, correct?
I was looking, as we talked about it moving up the property, I was looking at the back. I could see the back of the SUV. The assumption is the headlights were on, but I wasn't looking at the headlights.
All right, well, that would have meant that the area in front of the vehicle was lit up, correct?
Yes, but like I said, it was further up the road.
Now, sometime after that black SUV first arrived, you noticed that there were tire tracks, I should say, in a V shape on the street in front of the Albert home, correct?
That's correct.
And those tire tracks were from the curb in front of 34 Fairview toward the neighbor's property across the street and then back toward the curb, correct?
Yes, he came out, waved out towards across the street and came back in.
All right. And the pattern of those tire tracks that you observed were consistent with the vehicle making a three-point turn, correct?
Objection.
Can you answer that?
I don't know if the vehicle made a three-point turn. It could be consistent with because it was a wavy pattern. I've never looked at a tire tracks after I've done a three-point turn to determine what they actually look like, but in and back out.
There was nothing about those tire tracks that ruled out a three-point turn to you, correct?
No?
All right. You didn't see those tire tracks again until the black SUV arrived at the home, correct?
Yes, I didn't see them previous to the black SUV.
And Higgins' Jeep was already there before the black SUV arrived, correct?
Yes,
So Higgins' Jeep was already parked and stationary when there were no tire tracks in that area, correct?
I didn't notice I parked my car. We parked in the driveway and I walked in the house. So I wasn't looking at the tire tracks. So, but Higgins' Jeep was already parked.
Right. You didn't see tire tracks at that point, is my point.
Yeah, well, I didn't see any.
And at the point that you saw those tire tracks, there were no other vehicles in the area along the Albert family property line on Fairview other than Higgins' Jeep and the black SUV, correct?
That's my recollection, yes.
Okay, so now we're going to go back to where I had left off with regard to meeting your wife, Jennifer McCabe, in the car after leaving the waterfall. You recall that we sort of left off with you getting in the car and starting the drive home.
Yes.
Once you got inside the car, your wife ultimately called John O'Keefe along the ride home, correct?
John O'Keefe had texted my wife, and my wife had called him. He was asking where to. We think he was asking for the where to with the address. So she called him to tell him. And
you knew that he was asking that because the Bluetooth of the car was connected to her phone, correct? I believe the Bluetooth was on. Again, I could hear his conversation. Yeah. My assumption is the Bluetooth was on. Right. You could hear both sides of the conversation, correct? I could hear John as well, yes. Yeah, your wife and John, correct? Well, yes, I was sitting next to my wife. I could hear her. And you heard John tell your wife that he was planning to go to 34 Fairview, correct? Yes. He had told your wife in your presence that he and Karen would meet your wife and you there, correct? He said we're on our way. Right. And you knew, again, the plan was to go inside 34 Fairview, correct? Yes, that was the plan.
You heard your wife tell John that 34 Fairview's off Chapman Street, correct?
Either I was also talking, so I don't know if my wife was repeating, but yes, we did say off of Chapman Street.
It could have been you, could have been your wife, but he was
Yes.
told it was off Chapman Street, right?
That's correct, yes.
And then your wife hung up with John, at least temporarily, but then John called back, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
He indicated he needed more specific directions to 34 Fairview, correct?
Yes.
And then you heard your wife, or maybe you participated in the conversation, I won't rule that out, but between the two of you, you did give him more specific directions, correct?
Yes, we did.
And either you or your wife, and you can correct me if you know if it's one or the other, but one of you told him to go down Chapman and take Fairview as if they were going to Bella's house, correct?
Yes, we had mentioned go down Chapman to Fairview, you know where Bella lives, drive past Bella's street, the house will come up on your left.
Right, and I believe you previously explained that Bella was a friend of John's niece Kaylee and also your daughter Olivia, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So that was a good way to orient him as to where to go, correct?
Yes.
And once you did that, John O'Keefe never called back for any clarification, correct?
Yes, not to my recollection.
All right, and with regard to your state of mind, based on that conversation and the instructions that either you or your wife or both of you gave John, you certainly assumed that John and Karen would be arriving at Fairview coming from the Chapman Street direction, correct?
That was my assumption.
Okay.
As I had stated yesterday, there's multiple ways to go, but that was my assumption.
And it was an educated assumption based on the conversation that you had, correct?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Okay.
If I may hand the
Yes.
Thank you.
document. I have handed you something. If you could take a look and tell the jury whether you recognize what that depicts.
Yes, this is a map showing Cedar Crest Road intersecting with Fairview Road. On the opposite side shows Chapman Street intersecting with Fairview, as well as other streets in it's called the Cedar Crest neighborhood, in the Cedar Crest neighborhood.
And realizing that you don't have a compass or a rule, does it appear to be generally to scale in terms of where the roads are?
Yes.
And it appears to be a fair and accurate depiction of the layouts of particularly Cedar Crest, Fairview, and Chapman Street?
Yes.
Okay, I would offer that, Your Honor.
Is there any objection? Exhibit 86. And Mr. McCabe, why don't we hand over the other one?
May I display that for the jury, Your Honor?
Okay. That will be exhibit 88. Oh, thank you.
Well, what is displayed on the screen, Mr. McCabe? Does that appear to be what I just showed you in Exhibit 88?
Yes.
You see that there's a red bubble there. Does that have any meaning to you as you look at the map?
Yes, it'd be the location of 34 Fairview.
Okay. And as we look at the map, Cedar Crest is up the top and Chapman is down the bottom?
That is correct.
With regard to the directions that you gave, or you or your wife gave John O'Keefe, if they were coming as you directed them on Chapman Street, would they be taking a right onto Fairview or a left?
If they went the way that we mentioned, they'd be taking a left.
Okay, so in terms of looking at this map, they'd be traveling on Chapman Street really from the left to the right as you look at Exhibit 88, correct?
Yes, left to right, correct.
And that would allow them to take a left down Fairview, heading towards Cedar Crest, correct?
That is correct.
And you would agree with me that that would put the driver's side closest to the Albert property if they just kept going straight all the way to Cedar Crest, correct?
Yes, the driver's side would have been closest to the property.
Okay, we can turn the lights back on. That would mean, well, strike that. So you agree with me that your state of mind was that was the direction that they would go?
That's what I thought they would have, that's how I thought they would have come into the neighborhood, correct?
But you never saw the black SUV traveling in that direction or parked in that direction, correct?
That's correct.
That would mean that in order for the SUV to be facing in the other direction, one way would be for it to make a three-point turn, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
So we're saying if they came down from Chapman and then spun around and facing back up towards Chapman, is what you're asking? Yes, at some point she would have had to turn around.
Or do a three-point turn, correct?
She could do a three-point turn, or she could just loop around at Cedar Crest and come back up. Either one.
Right. And a three-point turn would be consistent with what the V-shaped tire tracks that you saw when you looked out the front of Brian Albert's house, correct?
Objection.
Sustain.
When you were interviewed by Michael Proctor on January 29th of 2022, you had not spoken with Ryan Nagel, correct?
No.
So it's fair to say you did not know what, if anything, Ryan Nagel had seen in terms of how or what direction the black SUV arrived in, correct?
Objection.
Sustain.
When you spoke to Michael Proctor on January 29th of 2022, the phone conversation that your wife had with John O'Keefe that you were either participating in or listening to, that was regarding the directions. That was fresh in your mind on January 29th, correct?
Yeah.
Those directions had just been given to John, the night before or really hours before, correct?
Yes.
So on January 29th, when you're talking to Michael Proctor, believing that John had driven down Chapman Street, you were trying to square in your own mind how the vehicle wound up in the other direction when you looked out the house, correct?
Objection.
Were you?
Can you just repeat that again?
Yeah,
I think I heard you. I just want to make
It
sure.
wasn't a great question. I'll see if I can make it any better. You're talking with Michael Proctor on January 29th in the afternoon, correct?
Yes.
And he's asking you about the positioning of the black SUV, among other things, correct?
Yes.
Again, I'm just getting to your state of mind. Your state of mind was that you gave the direction, you or your wife gave the directions to John, and you're thinking he came down Chapman, but you never saw the vehicle in that direction. It was only in the other direction facing toward Chapman. Is that fair?
Yes.
And so you're naturally trying to square in your own mind, trying to make it make sense as to how that happened, correct?
Objection.
You can answer that. Were you trying to square that in your own mind?
I wasn't trying to, I don't know if I was trying to square it. I just knew that for some reason her vehicle was facing up Chapman. Are you asking?
All right.
I didn't know what she did. I just know her vehicle was facing up Chapman.
And to you, that was the significance of the V-shaped tire tracks when you were talking to Proctor, right?
Objection.
Was it?
If I recall, I said there was a V-shaped tire tracks, and I believe the question was, could it be consistent with a three-point turn? I said it could be. I didn't know if it was a three-point turn. It could be because it was weird tracks. Again, I did not see the vehicle. I don't know if she pulled in the driveway and turned. I don't know if she went to Cedar Crest and turned. I don't know if she did a three-point turn and turn. I have no idea.
All right, but just one last question on this three-point turn. You offered the V-shaped tire tracks as an explanation for what could have happened, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow that one.
I had stated there was a V-shaped tire tracks. I didn't say it was a three-point turn.
All right, well, you'd agree with me in any case that if John and Karen entered from Cedar Crest and you saw them where you saw them, there'd be no need for a three-point turn, correct?
So you're saying if she didn't come from Chapman, she came from the other side, Cedar Crest, there would be no need for a three-point turn
Because
or any type of turn because she was already facing that way.
that's right. If she came from Cedar Crest, she's already in the very direction that you saw the black SUV when you looked out, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, your testimony during this trial is that you were looking straight out from the house to the street. And, you know, again, I understand your qualification. It could have been 3 feet this way or 3 feet that way. But your memory is that the car was essentially right in front of you, give or take, the first time you saw it.
My memory is the car was right in front of the front door.
Yes, okay. And you were looking straight at it, correct?
As I had stated earlier, the first time I looked out, I don't recall if I was looking straight out from the front door or if I was peeking out through the window, but it was, my sight would had it lined up in front of the front door. So if I looked out from the front door, then it would have been, yes, straight in front of me.
And you would agree with me that when you were looking at the vehicle from wherever you were looking at it, you were looking straight over the front lawn, correct?
I would have been looking over the lawn, correct? Again,
And
I was focused on the
tire
vehicle.
tracks were
Hold on, Mr.
Sorry.
Yannetti.
I said I was focused on the vehicle. I was focused.
I didn't know that he was not done with his answer.
My fault.
We only can have one person speaking at a time. The court reporter can't be expected to have two different people at the same time. So please be cautious. The lawyer needs to be cautious of that.
I will try, Your Honor. Did you get your full answer out, sir?
I did.
Okay. You would agree with me that the V-shaped tire tracks were farther away from you than the front lawn?
Yes, they were on the road.
And if you were able to clearly see those V-shaped tire tracks, you certainly were able to clearly see the Albert's front lawn, correct?
As I mentioned, I was looking over the lawn, but I'm assuming the lawn was somehow in my visibility. I wasn't focusing on the lawn.
Okay. I'm going to try that question again and see if I can get a yes or no answer. If you were able to clearly see the V-shaped tire tracks, you were certainly able to clearly see the Albert's front lawn, correct?
If I looked at it, it's a confusing question. As I said, I was focused on the road. I wasn't looking at the lawn.
But let me be clear. I'm not asking you if you looked at it. I asked if you were able to clearly see it.
I would be able to, yes.
And when you looked out at that black SUV, and saw the V-shaped tire tracks, you did not see a 6'2" man lying on the front lawn, correct?
No, I did not.
And at no point in time, whenever you looked at that black SUV, did you see John O'Keefe inside the vehicle, correct?
No, I did not see John in the vehicle.
At no point in time did you hear any yelling outside 34 Fairview, correct?
No, I did not.
At no point in time did you hear any scream of pain outside 34 Fairview, correct?
No, I didn't.
At no point in time did you ever hear any crash noises outside 34 Fairview.
Objection.
I'll allow it.
No.
And last question on this point, at no point did you hear any noises at all outside 34 Fairview that attracted your attention?
No, there's music playing in the house, so I didn't hear anything.